Alex, what's up, man? How you doing?
Uh, pretty good, I guess. Like, I mean, just enjoying my rest day. You always seem to catch me on my rest day when we do stuff like this.
Hey, what do you usually do on your rest day? What's a rest day? Do you just like totally chill?
It depends. I mean, sometimes you can just go out for a coffee spin. Uh, I mean, I know this doesn't sit well with Patrick and Brandon, but I just love coffee spins. I like to go like 20 minutes to cafe, sit there for a few hours, and then 20 minutes back home. That's my perfect day, especially when it's really warm.
Oh, you're
But
sitting there for a few hours. Okay. I did that's a
yeah, but
that's that's a long
yeah,
chill, but it is a rest day. I get it. But
but usually like you have to understand like the coffee culture and like in Europe. I mean, let's say example like when you're in Holland or in Belgium, like you can have lunch, you can have everything in a cafe while sipping on a cappuccino or something, and it's so good. Or Italy even better. But how usually like now that I switch coaches and I started working with Josh Hunt, which you
yep,
met,
yep.
it's usually just a full day off because I'm like doing either two-day blocks or 3-day blocks added in with the gym work. So yesterday I did 5 hours with a friend of mine, which I haven't seen in 2 years. So we did a bit more than I should have done, but yeah, just full day off. Maybe I'll go like for a walk or something like that. Just chill, try to recover. And at the end of the day, it's only October. I mean, I don't have to like do anything crazy now.
For sure. For sure. Oh, there's something you just so when you're sitting there at the cafe, sorry to go into this a bit much. Are you having like if you're sitting there for 2 hours, are you having multiple drinks? Or are you just having one and just chilling and kind of sipping on it?
Here's what you have to understand. And I had this conversation with the American woman who moved to Slovenia, and he said like, I don't understand you guys. And I said, why? And she goes, you buy a cup of coffee and you just sip on it for 2 hours. And like, she had to have 3 cups just to keep up with us because we kept chatting away.
I guess that's just
So
Americans, man. I mean, it's not a blanket statement. I'm sure there are plenty of people who aren't, but yeah, I guess we're just like bottomless pits, just keeping the furnace going. Got to keep intake.
no, I mean, I guess it depends from country to country. Like, I mean, in Italy, usually, like if you go just for coffee, just have that small espresso, whatever you want. Maybe have a croissant or a brioche, like they call it in Italy, and just go on with your day. It just depends. Like with riders, usually you tend to stop for a bit longer, but it just depends from person to person, I guess.
Yeah, maybe this is a
So,
tangent here, but I'm curious because this is like I'm thinking going into base miles. So my
I mean,
issue
I mean,
always,
I mean, if you want like how not to do a coffee stop, I can put me and my friend Fraser. We did a 6-hour ride this summer. We stopped under the Moor van Gernsbergen in Belgium, and we sat there for 3.5 hours.
gosh, but I'm sure it's
we
awesome
had,
though. It's an
yeah, we had
experience, right?
yeah, but just let me finish this. We had only two drinks, two drinks and two mutton tarts, which is like a delicacy there for 3.5 hours.
And you're just chatting, just having a good
just
time, catching up.
just chatting,
Yeah.
and there was a guy having a bachelor's party, and they dressed him up at a custom, and he had to ride the cobble, so it was hilarious to watch because they were all drunk.
Oh boy. Yeah, I mean, I'd probably stick around to watch that. But
Yeah,
so
so
let
I
me ask
mean,
you this though, if it's because it's getting a little colder there, right? I think I saw in the
yeah,
photos. Yeah. So
yeah,
my issue with stopping is then like I get all that condensation, all that sweat, and then I start again and then I'm like freezing cold, So if I would do a longer stop in the summertime. I try not to stop, but if I'm with a friend, you got to have fun. But in the
yeah.
wintertime, I try not to stop at all just because then it like makes the second half so much more difficult. Do you find that?
I mean, I just take my kit off basically, just take my layers
Yeah.
off, or sometimes I actually saw this so when I first started training with pros, I saw that some guys actually pack an additional base layer with them. It was like weird to see, but I tried it once and just it's like a lifesaver, just like a tiny base layer, and just like it helps tons. But I mean, for me, it's not an issue. I just take my jacket off or whatever. When I usually sit inside, I never sit outside when it's cold. But
Yep.
if it's really cold, I just keep plugging away. Like, I mean, that doesn't make sense. I
Yep.
did a mistake. We did a mistake once with a group, so it was crazy cold, like minus 10 degrees Celsius. Just like the whole week, and like we found this window of the day when it was between -2 and -3, and that actually felt warm at the time.
Oh my gosh.
So we stopped at a cafe, and when we went out, like, oh man, Oh man, that was like the most unpleasant experience of my life. Like, luckily there was a half an hour climb up from the town, so like that we got warm. But the trick was, because we went into Croatia, we had to go back into Slovenia. Oh, once you crested the border, you had like a 15K descent.
Oh my God. That's freezing, dude.
Yeah, that was freezing, and I still have pictures to prove it from that day. It's like, oh man, so hilarious. But at the end of the day, look, I mean, I don't know why people are against like stopping on rides. Like, you imagine you're in the office, like you have your lunch break. It's the same for me.
Yep. Hey,
So
I want to talk about the base layer thing. So the base layer, you'd swap if you were to bring an extra base layer, you'd like go to the
yeah,
cafe, take your
yeah,
base layer off, put the fresh one on.
yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to clarify. And then speaking of sitting outside, dude, I had this buddy, Charlie. I don't know if he listens to any of this, but we when I lived in New York City, we would go out to this place in Piermont called Bunbury's, and he was a newer cyclist, but he got like extremely hot. So we always, and this is like January or February. So it's like whatever, 35, 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And we're sitting outside. He always wanted to sit outside, and like I would just be shivering outside, like with my jacket on. I'd have like extra gloves on, and he would just be feeling great. And then with the second half of the ride was even worse, because like I was just absolutely freezing. Yeah, I think it's finding what works for you in those conditions, and
Yeah, yeah.
I do like that. Go inside, take your layers off so you aren't sweating, and then put them back on when you go outside. I think that's the best way of
I,
doing it.
I mean, I had a conversation with my coach George this morning actually, and just like you were, like this will go to the topic of the call, like that we discussed earlier. I mean, we're just like with the mental pressure and everything. I feel that these rides are important to have, because it just takes the pressure off you. You can just relax. I mean, this is a time in a day when I'll relax, be that if I'm alone, or if I'm with my friends. And yeah, I mean, just like I can take those 15 minutes, half an hour, like how much we stop, just to enjoy with my friends, have a sip of coffee, which I love coffee, like have maybe a pastry or something. And that also goes with the eat, like with nutrition. I mean, I'm not gonna shy away from coffee, be that sorry, from cake, be that now or be that later in the season. But if you would say that to me a few years ago, I would be like, you're crazy. I mean, like, cake will get you fat, you know.
I'm with you, dude. I think you have to. I remember reading this thing about, like, I don't know if it was, maybe they mentioned Sky, but everyone can relate to Sky marginal gains and stuff. And they were saying, like, for their nutrition, and I know this is good. This is a topic we wanted to talk on, was nutrition with you specifically. Was there like 75-25, or maybe it was 80-20 of like, 80%, on within their goals of like eating healthy, and then 20% of just like, hey, you got to live your life, dude. Have some cake, have some dessert, have some
Yeah,
fun.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So I mean, I went through an eating disorder, through a mental burnout, overtraining, whatever. I mean, I'm a case study on how not to do things. So I had a conversation with Gemma Samson. Hope I pronounced her name correctly. She's a nutritionist, dietitian, sorry, and she works with World Tour Cycles. So I had a consultation with her on Monday, and I actually spoke openly about my eating disorder problems and etc. So she basically said the same thing to me, just like, you need to eat, you need to fuel for yourself, but first and foremost, you need to enjoy food, because like, if you're stuck in a limbo like I was, like, food is simply not enjoyable. You're just like watching a plate and just like thinking, oh my god, like, what's this in front of me, Or I mean, it's a difficult topic to like discuss, but I think it's important that it's mentioned, because that's a real thing, and it's more common with amateur athletes than it is like with pros. So with pros you have a lot of cases, but it's more common with amateur athletes, because you have someone, let's say, rider, let's call him rider A, he improves by 20%, and then he plateaus. And what's the first thought that comes to your mind? How to improve performance? Cut weight. And that's where things go sideways, because you tend to like cut your calorie intake, then you don't have energy, you won't recover, you won't adapt. Adios amigos, we could call it.
So, all great points, dude. How did you find yourself through your own battles? Was it like an overnight thing? I'm sure it wasn't, but I'm sure it was a steady process and things kind of got worse, right? Like, did you kind of like progressively like cut calories, or how, I guess basically what I'm getting at is how did you end up in that situation where you're like, hey, I need to change things?
I mean, you have to know something about me before. Like, I have like that disorder, like AHAD, hyperactivity. So
Yep.
it's not hard to motivate me to do something. Um, I actually, my highest weight point was almost 130 kilos when I was younger. So I dropped like 50 kilos when I started cycling, just like off the bat, like in a few years, just like 20, 25, 30 kilos. Uh, and then I started working with the coach I mentioned, the guy who's the DS in Bahrain. He helped me a lot with nutrition, but it was done in a healthy way, in a controlled way. So that year I lost the most weight. But what happened was the year after I couldn't afford him. And I started working with a guy who also raced in the World Tour, but had sketchy methods, to say the least. And basically that's where it started to like go south, because I just wanted to keep pushing through. I just wanted to be lighter, because I thought, oh, being lighter will help me be stronger. I'll be a better rider. And then I made the biggest mistake of my life, probably. There was a big boom here with a few athletes tried the high fat, low carb, ketogenic, however you want to call it, approach, and they got really strong. One of those riders is actually local to me. Another one is just from the country, really successful cyclist. And me and a friend of mine, we tried this. And we both got light. And this comment he made synced a few years later. He sends me a text on WhatsApp one day, like, you should try to add BCAAs to your supplement range, because I feel like I feel better after that. And what me and him did, we just basically put our bodies into a catabolic state. We didn't burn fat, we lost muscle. So the sad story of this is the guy who actually gave us the advices later refused to take a dope test and was suspended for 4 years. So like, draw your own conclusions there. But I wouldn't, if I could go back a few years and just like say, no, just fuel efficiently, don't worry about weight, your body will adapt naturally. It's just like being fueled is so much more important than being light, I mean, it's just like it's like a car running without petrol, basically.
Dude, I got so many questions for you here.
Yeah.
And I know like this, we could talk for hours on this, but high level, were there any big differences when you were with the Bahrain guy, and he was working with you on your nutrition, and then comparing that to how things were with the next guy? Were there any like big things that stood out as differences? Like, what are some things that worked for you? And then what are some red flags that happened with the second guy when you were like, I'm not feeling great about this, but I'm going to commit to it?
I mean, basically there were sketchy advices, to be fair, with the second guy, like faster training. And what you have to know about faster training suppresses your nerve system. So I mean, for some people it does work, but it doesn't help you to lose weight, or it doesn't help you to improve your fat metabolism. I mean, it does to a degree, but you can also do that like while consuming carbohydrates. What worked with the first guy was that I had like a variety of different foods. He actually prescribed meals for me. I have a diet plan still saved. It was like the variety was amazing. Like, he gave me like 10 or 13 different menus, and I could just pick what I liked. And that was the thing. It was always something different. It wasn't like the same. With this guy, I actually gave me an advice: just take a tablespoon of olive oil and go ride for 4 to 6 hours. I actually heard Sean Yates, who was a coach in Sky, he did this, but that's just old school sketchy methods.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like pit like that any young rider can fall into, because I have ex teammates who like also fell into the pit, and then I just like, when you confront them, like, you're on the verge of an eating disorder, and I was like, no, I'm not, but you're obsessing over freaking salad, come on.
And is the thought process there like, hey, this has worked for whatever the other ex pros, or is it like, or I'm sure it's a combination of this, like, yes, this has worked for other people. It definitely, if it worked for so-and-so, why it could work for you? And then also I'm guessing a little bit of like, what, you can't handle this? Like, this is like the hard man's diet.
Yeah, more or less this what you mentioned. Like, I was like, I said, like, I can't do this. I mean, I just told him like, I'm going backwards. I can't like push through. I think he prescribed me an interval session, but it was an interval session. Basically, there was no structure there, to be fair, even when training. So it was just like he would send me a text in the morning and like you do X, Y, and Z. And I think it was just like hit a few hills, like it's 350 watts or something. It was just slightly above my threshold then. And I couldn't do it. I was basically crawling at 250 to 270 watts. I just remember that day because it was crazy cold and just like a bad day overall. And just like, you have no energy. Like, I mean, and then his response was, how can you not do it? I simply can. I mean, it's just like, it's difficult to explain. I don't even understand like what goes through a person's mind when he sends an advice like that to someone. I mean, now when an athlete asks me about nutrition, I just said like, eat your carbs, eat your carbs, eat your carbs. So yeah,
So what about in that
it's
process then? Were you starting to like fail or not feel good on like a few workouts, or was it every workout, or what was the pattern there?
you have to also take in consideration I was working there and then more or less full times at a gas station, and I was rotating between 4 shifts. So to add that in, it made it even worse because you had that added stress, like not sleeping, chef work. Just I was failing constant workouts, and then you it's difficult. Then you end up like finding yourself binging on food and etc. So it wasn't a pretty time, but then again, I didn't have the support I have today, and then I didn't have the knowledge I have today. So yeah, I mean, if someone gives me an advice like this, I'll just tell them to like, you can go where. So
For sure, man. Well, it sounds like, but I think a big message here is you could tell something was wrong. I mean, even outside of the workouts, you knew like, hey, I'm not feeling right. Like I'm hungry. But
actually no,
no, okay,
I didn't know just because I thought it's like a part of the process. Like I'm gonna get better through this. Like it'll pass, but it didn't, and it got worse and worse and worse and worse. And I got to the point like I was just like counting every detail. Like, you mean I had that app, MyFitnessPal, I was counting every detail. I mean, just like, or weighing myself 10, 15 times a day. Now, if I weigh myself multiple times a day, it's just like to make sure that I drink enough,
yeah.
because I tend to forget. But uh, like otherwise, it's just like, it's mad. I mean, it's madness. But I guess I'm not the only one who went through this. I know a lot of people and I have friends who went through the same thing. So it's common in cycling, especially as you try to move up on the Richter scale, so to say. Uh, but there are also stories that are not told amongst amateur athletes. I mean, I have a fair few athletes which I'm allowed to share their stories also today. Be that male or female, like they all go through the same things, same emotions that me or you go
For
through.
sure.
But for them, it tends to be even worse because you have to count in. They probably have a family. They have a full-time job. I don't have either. I'm just a full-time rider. I can come home, put my legs up, and it's a bit easier if I fall into it. That I mean, it's not easier if I slip into that habit, but it doesn't put so much pressure like if someone has a family. I mean, it does play with your head, but it's still different. Like if let's say at that point I would have a family, and it's I think for amateur athletes it's even worse than for the ones who do this full time.
Well, I think there's a few things there too, dude. I want to go back to some in regards to you, but if in regards to what you're talking about, like we have a family, people have different goals, right? I'm saying
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
yes, I think for you, maybe it was a bit more intense in one regard because like this is your ultimate goal. Like you're like, cycling is my life. But for the other people with families, maybe it's like, hey, I can find these. Maybe that isn't their ultimate goal. They want to be good at the Sunday group ride or whatever their goal is, their upcoming event. But they're trying to find those marginal gains where it's like, okay, I have less time on the bike. I can eat less and bring my weight down. So it's like ultimately it leads to the same outcome, you know?
yeah.
But what I wanted to go back was the red flags for you. And just for anyone listening, if they're like, I know like now you have much more context of this. You've been through, you came out the other end. But if people are in the midst of this now, like what were some red flags there? Like people always talk about like what was your general, how was your sleep? Like people talk about like sex life,
Horrible,
like with your
horrible.
drive. Okay.
I mean, sex drive, that was never a problem for some odd reason. Like usually that gets affected first, but sleep, sometimes I still suffer from sleep deprivedness now, because you just get too hungry at night and just cannot sleep. So I was talking with Jem on Monday, and I just like, she answered a lot of questions that no one could before. So basically what I had was like a case of bulimia plus I think it's the official term is RED-S, so like relative energy deficiency.
Okay.
So that can take up to a few months, even years to recover from. I mean, it's just bad sleep is number one, groggy mood. Like you just think about what your next meal will look like, obsess over the smallest things that you eat during the day. Your body image goes to hell. Sorry for the expression. Uh, and yeah, and so on, so on. I mean, just like it's endless. Like, I mean,
I think ultimately when food starts to become the enemy, or you start constantly obsessing about that, that's a big red flag of like, okay,
yeah.
hey, maybe my priorities are a bit shuffled here, you know? Um, but no, I think this is good, man. This is a really good topic. And thank you overall for sharing all this. I really
Oh,
appreciate it. And I
no,
think
no
everyone's
worries.
really
No
going
worries.
to appreciate this. But I know you said you had some stories, man. So I'd love to hear some of your athlete and some friend stories.
Yeah, I could share a story of my former training partner. And just to put in context, the guy is not even 24 years old. So, and he's already out of the sport. And to put in context, again, we're talking about a rider who participated in, he was a national champion, junior under 23. He took the overall win in an under 23 and elite win at nationals, competed for his country at European and world champs. So that's what a type of rider we're talking about. So this will be maybe a good story for people like who have kids in the sport, but also just like for people with families, because this individual was basically um, his family took him out of the sport because a family member put too much pressure on him, and just like it was unbelievable what they did with him. Just like makes a joke often, like I did 6 hour training rides back to back to back, and there was three hours in front of the car, 3 hours behind the car, because his family member would just like follow him around with no rest, zero. And to top it off, he was still going to school at the time. uh, so we became good friends around, I think, 2018. That time he managed to sort me a contract with a team, so I went to sign the contract, and we became really close. We're still really close. And a few months later, he goes, "Well, I'm thinking of going back home," because he was in a foreign country back then. And then things started to come out slowly. And as we became closer and closer, he started trusting me with more and more things. Then the year after, he signed with a team here, really good elite team, like it's actually from my hometown. Uh, and he also took the same coaches I had. So Jake Collins from the UK. So Jake did like the best he could to help him, but there was no point of return. I just remember like he could do one day and then he was fried, like had no energy. He couldn't train, just like mentally, physically, he was fried in both aspects. But if you put him into a race, he was fine. Just for training, like he was done, like done and dusted. Uh, and like the funny side of all this is he actually became national champion that year with a, he didn't ride a bike, he didn't ride his bike for 10 days prior to nationals, and he won it. So I mean, that was, I was actually, we had nationals on the same day. I got dropped. I was sitting on the sidelines in the fit zone, like my phone rings, I'm national champion. It was like, how can you do that? So that was a silver lining. But then he did the European games after that, and then that was his last race, and like bon voyage. But now, like, we had an open conversation about 2 weeks ago. At his lowest, his weight was around 60 kilos. Now, like, he stopped like 2 years ago. He's close to 90 kilos now. That's how badly his body rebounded. And he hardly changed his eating habits. He eats like a normal person, but just like his hormonal status is just like done. Like, done. Even his head, still like it's insane.
So what was it? Was it just like he was just sick of it? I mean, he was just sick of training, right? Was it just or
Both his body and head, both
yeah,
body and head. Like, I mean, it's something that like you would have to meet the person. You would have to meet him in person to actually see this in context. Like, uh, it's just something like that's it's really difficult to explain. I mean, I'm like because I'm involved there. We were training partners. We trained every day. I saw him like if he didn't have anyone to train, he would like even not go out training. I mean, it's it was really dark time for him, but I'm glad like that he's slowly getting rid of it. But like his body will still like suffer for the next probably few years until this gets sorted.
when he looks back on it now, can he see things clearly of like where things went wrong and
Yeah,
if he were to
yeah,
go back and adjust it? Okay. Did he give
yeah.
you
But
it?
that's sorry to cut you off, but the thing is he couldn't change anything because his family member at that time thought like this is the best for you, we have to do. Even he had a really good coach who worked with World Tour riders, and even the coach didn't have anything to say. What his family member said, that's how it was done. So I mean that's like number one goal. If you have kids or if you have a family member, like don't intervene between a coach and an athlete, never, because like then things will go south, and that's also a sign a bit of manipulation or like control. So let's say that you have someone interview coming between you and your coach. I mean, and just like telling your coach, oh, he needs to do X, Y, and Z to become better. Like that's a sign, like just like trying to control, and it's gonna fail eventually. But you're gonna be the one who's gonna pay the price,
For sure.
as he did.
I talked to Josh, your coach, Josh Hunt,
Yeah, yeah,
last week, and we're trying to do it again. There's a story there in regards to the interview, but no, but we talked a lot because he specializes in like junior riders and like younger guys coming
yeah,
up. And one of the things he touched on was like just the freedom in dealing with a younger athlete. I know we're going on a tangent, you and I, right now, but I think this is good. Is that if anybody listening has kids or is mentoring anybody younger, it's giving them the freedom, especially if they have a coach, for sure. Like, don't intervene. But if they don't have a coach, allowing them, if they want to ride one day or take a day off or ride the mountain bike, ride the road bike, ride the cross bike, whatever they want to ride. Or if they don't want to ride at all, if they want to go play soccer or basketball, let them
yeah,
naturally come to the sport. That was one thing that Josh really focused on was, there are definitely, younger athletes who are driven, but you can't, emphasize that too much. It's allowing them to make their own path, choose their own path.
yeah. But I mean, you have to also take in consideration with kids here. Kids tend to, especially that's at least my experience, like from other cyclists, other athletes that I know. It's if they start super young, they're bound to like fiddle out of the sport really early, and you have like like numerous cases of guys being predicted to be the next superstar, and he just fell out of the sport by age 21, 22, just because they started super early and there was like so much pressure on them to perform and just to like invest their time into training as a teenager, like when they could be doing other things. And also just like from another point of view, you need to try other things because it will also you get to know your body better. That's number one. You'll develop other skills through other sports, which is because on a bike you just like sit still and pedal, right? So I mean, if you run, like, it's just gonna be healthier and more mentally fresh. That's why pretty much Roglic is so successful. He came late into the sport. He's now 31, 32. He's still hungry.
Yep.
And I mean, that's it's just like you have like a lot of cases, like I said, like riders starting really, really early and then fiddling out. I mean, I raced for a few years in Italy, and that's like the most common case there. I met a guy, actually, I met his family because in a race in Austria, he was riding for one of the best development teams in Italy, like was predicted to go world tour in a few years. And I met his mom and dad on the feed zone after I got dropped from the race. And he said, "Oh, this is my son. He has this and this offer already from this and this team." And then 3 months later, he makes an Instagram post because like my head is done because of burnout. I'm deciding to call it quits. Thank you for the last 15 years. That was basically his post.
Jeez.
Yeah. But it's again, he started when he was 5 years old, and
Yeah,
he's filled out by age 24.
that's rough, man. I feel like you see that more and more often, unfortunately. I don't know, I'll keep it high level here, but I know of some athletes from cyclocross, men and women, very up and coming, very talented, and winning U23 national championships. And then now you don't see them at all, and they're working at bike shops, which is awesome. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. It's amazing, but it's just you see that talent, and you're like, what happened there? And I think it's just a little bit too much.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, just like it's just pressure. You get sick of it. You had enough of it, and I mean, that's what I think. That's what I think. Like in a sport like cycling, the best age is to start like between 15 and 17 years old. Like when you're approaching the end of juniors, you still have time to learn. Even like you to learn the basics, how to race. A lot of people will say, "Oh no, you need to go through the whole pyramid of cycling," but there are more and more cases proving that you don't have to do that. So I mean, it's just like um, yeah,
what do you mean by that? What do you mean go through the whole pyramid of cycling?
I was reading with an interview with a coach recently. He's I think about 65 or 70 years old, like really decorated cyclist. And he said like that he's an athlete. He coaches a world tour rider. He said that he is a decorated athlete. He went through the whole pyramid, so he knows his basics. And he highlighted Roglic. He basically said that Roglic still doesn't know what he's doing in a bunch. He doesn't know how to move up. While that may be true, and that in some cases that he still doesn't know how to do things. That how can I put this? That just makes him more hungry to like learn on his mistakes.
For
Like you
sure.
see him, he crashes, gets up, continues.
Yep. No, I think
Uh,
another good example there too is Kristen Faulkner, who
yeah, yeah,
was on,
yeah.
who I'll call her out because she raced in New York City. She raced for actually a competing team, obviously on the women's side. And she's talked about, I'm only going to call her out because she said this in interviews and stuff, is that getting used to when she was riding in Belgium, she was crushing it here in the US. She goes to Belgium and she's like, I'm not used to riding in a pack, I'm not used to these narrow roads. And she's like extremely strong going off the front and stuff, but she's hungry and she's like, it's just part of the sport. I'm learning. I'm hungry to learn.
I mean, a few weeks ago you did the interview with Alexi. Alexi said the same thing. So I mean, it's just like it's just you need to be hungry constantly. Like, and if you start in an early age, like you get sick of it. But then also, like I had a few experiences, like with people who came late into the sport, like with athletes I work with, and it's again the same thing. They put too much pressure on themselves and try to like score perfection, and then they'll just fiddle out of the sport because of doing too much and not enjoying the process.
Let's talk about
So,
let's talk about
so
pressures, man. That was one thing I wanted to mention with you. Do you, because I know like obviously you've had your own struggles. Everybody has their struggles, like I'm
yeah.
saying, whatever they are, their own demons when they go in, you're in the weight room or you're going on a training ride or you're lining up for the race. What have you found? Because you're racing at a very high level over there and you're hungry, man. What have you found are some pressures that you deal with now, and how do you deal with them?
I mean, I'll put myself on the sideline for now. I'm going to put two examples out. So Fraser, who I mentioned, he has this saying, happy head, happy legs. So if an athlete is happy and will perform the best. I had a conversation with Josh this morning about this because I had some tests this lineup this week and I felt under the pressure because I wanted to perform well. So that I recently signed with a new team. I'm not going to announce the name yet because I still have to wait for the official press release.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But I wanted to like show myself in good colors, in a good way. And also the DS contacted me last night and he said like, oh, Joe, it's only October. So it just like happened. And I put too much pressure on myself and just like happy head, happy legs. When you are happy in a good space, you're going to perform well. Going to pressure. So one of my closest friends also next to Fraser, she is a female athlete, 24 years old. Her numbers are so high that she could be amongst the female pro peloton. I'm not just saying this because we all know that the people who know her know how strong she is. And her environment put pressure on her to join the Zwift Academy to potentially score a contract, which if she would just roll everyone because she's so strong. And I'm still amazed, like she keeps improving. And I think I read it somewhere. I had a conversation with another one, and I was also guilty of that. That I put some pressure on her, but then it clicked in my head. Like I never asked her the question, "Do you really want to do this?" And like when I asked that question, and I got no, and we just like had a conversation. It's like, no, I'm never doing this again with another athlete. Firstly, always ask, "What do you want to do?" Then like we decide. So that's like the element of pressure. People were putting pressure on her to race, and just like to do the Zwift Academy thing, even if she didn't want to do it, you know. So it just like put her in a bad space, and then she was abusing actually Zwift racing to make her feel better, just to relieve stress. And it got to in the end, it got to a real nasty point of overtraining again. But luckily, we stopped it at a good time, and yeah, she left unscathed. Let's put it like
That's
that.
good, man. That's good. And
Yeah.
you know what? That's the thing too. I think people get irritated, or I don't know, maybe irritated isn't the word, but you look at someone and you're like, oh my God, they're so good. I wish I was as good as them. I wish I had their watts per kilo or whatever. And they're like, they're not even racing, or they're taking a week off or a month off or a year off. And it's like, you don't know what someone's going through. You know, everyone has their own
Yeah.
pressures, their own inner demons. And yeah, and for some people, as much as we all love cycling, some people might fall out of love or not love it as much. So it's whatever,
I
it's
mean,
finding your journey in the sport.
I saw a few cases of a person going from multiple disciplines in cycling and just basically fiddling out completely, just because that person was always like trying to strike perfection and trying to be the best as he or she could. Because again, like the circle was putting pressure on that individual. Oh, you're this, you're that, you're good, you're etc. But you don't do this. I mean, at the end of the day, like if you're an amateur athlete, you do this from enjoyment, you know. I mean, it's okay. My case is a bit different. I race for a team and contracted, etc. It's a bit different, but still, like then why I think that this team is a good choice for me. After a few conversations I had with the DS, uh, he basically said to me like, if the riders will be happy, they will perform again. Happy head, happy legs, the same way. So I actually managed to open up to my new DS like quite a lot when we had like a few good conversations, and I feel like I made a really good choice with him just because he's understanding. He used to race himself, he used to face pressures, and he also understands the eating disorder side, you know. So I mean, yeah, just like you have to be happy to perform well. And like even George this morning said, some of his best performances came when he was the most relaxed and just like didn't like give a flipping f for the world.
Let me ask you this, dude. I'm gonna put you on the spot. If you were to wake up tomorrow or a week from now or whenever and riding wasn't fun, what would you do?
Lay in bed. You won't find me riding if I'm not happy. It's the example goes like this year, like when I was in Belgium, I didn't feel happy. I just wanted to go home, and yeah, I mean, it's just like I just laid in bed, to be fair, or I went out somewhere. I went for a walk. I'm not gonna touch my bike if I'm not happy, because then you're basically banging your head against the wall. And I did that in the past, and it got me nowhere. It got me into a even bigger hole than I was in. So I mean, just like dug my own hole even deeper. So that's why I'm saying like the circle I have around me now is something I could only wish a few years ago. After people like I mentioned, Fraser, I mentioned Josh, and even others that constantly remind me, do this for enjoyment, not just because you're chasing a dream, you know.
For
Because
sure.
at the end of the day, even like the riders at the highest level, they have to have fun. And Josh mentioned me because he is friends with both the Yates brothers. Like they perform well when they're happy, both of them. And it doesn't matter like what kind of numbers they're pushing out in training. If they're not happy, they're not going to perform. That's simple.
And you know what, dude? I want to highlight this because I think a lot of newer athletes, maybe you get into the sport, you love it, you know, and you're like, I'm never gonna, or you know, it's a few things, you know, I'm never gonna get sick of this, or but eventually there comes a time for everyone when you're like, maybe I don't really want to go out today. Maybe they force themselves to go out. And I think a lesson you and I have been in the sport for a while, you know, and you've
Mhm.
been competing at a much higher level than me for a long time. But it's like being okay with taking that day off, being comfortable with, hey, you know what? I don't need to ride today, or I'll just skip today's workout. Maybe I'll skip tomorrow's workout, and leaning into that and be like, not putting that pressure on yourself, and things are going to work out. And that's for the longevity of the sport. If you force it over and over, and this is with anything, whether it's riding or diet, that you're really just digging yourself a hole, and it's okay. And people at your level, people at my level too, below you, like you just gotta be comfortable with it, and it's okay.
I mean, firstly, you're a bit modest, like you're racing also at a high level in cyclocross. So like, don't be so modest. But that's where also like the importance of having a break comes in. Like I took like 20 days off this year. Sorry, this like let's call it off season, even if those people don't want to name it that way. And yeah, I mean, 10 days in, I was already mentally fresh. And you can ask Josh, like, I was texting him, like, each day, can I ride? Can I ride? Can I ride? And each day I got the firm, no, 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 rest. Um, that's where the importance of having a break comes in. But I just don't understand, like, the psychology side of people, like, not even wanting to take a break. I mean, it's just like you go on holiday from work, right? It's the same thing. You're training 11 months out of a year. You can take that, I'd say 5 days, 10 days. If you race a lot, even a month off, like you're not going to lose anything. Example, uh, after I knew where I'm going to race next year, I got a bit scared because I'm stepping up to much, much higher level than I was before. And I'm going to face much stronger competition. So I was a bit anxious, like how will my body respond? And that I need to train hard, not smart. Second one, hard, to regain it back. But it only took me maybe a week or so to find my legs again, just a few days. And yesterday I did 5 hours and I was already riding 200 watts. So that's like 4 weeks into my training. So your body will respond quicker, especially as you have like those seasons behind you. It doesn't take a long period to come back. But I'm not advocating that you take a month off, like if you haven't had the amount of race days that I'm having, or the amount of kilometers I do.
For sure, there's always context for individuals here, but I think overall it is a little bit of like, I think for everyone, it's a little bit of less is more, you know, and taking some
Mm-hmm.
time off isn't going to hurt you. I just had a phone call with somebody last night, and I coached this guy, and I coached two friends, you know, they live in the same area. And he was saying, oh, so-and-so, I heard he's taking a week off. Like and he's like, he's got his own stuff going on. And he's like, I really want to double down on this week. You know, I want to catch up on him. And I was like, I don't recommend that. I was like, let's take a
Bad
week
idea.
off. I'm like, maybe it's not the same week, but I think you need to take some time off. And he's like, yeah, but physically I feel good. I'm like, maybe physically, but mentally, I think you need to do a little refresh here. And I know this is kind of a hot topic because we also mentioned how Brendan put out that podcast recently, how he doesn't take time off, you know, and I think in the context for him, it works, you know, like there's a lot of nuance there, and we should do a call and that would work out better to get his own opinion. But also, and I don't think he mentioned this in the podcast, and maybe you remember this, Alex. I think it was last summer, or I don't know when it was, but he did another podcast when he was like, you know what? I'm not supposed to have a rest week, but I think he took like 7 or 8 days off the bike, and he was just like, I'm
Yeah,
not
I think I
feeling it, you
remember
know?
this.
Because I'm saying like so maybe he's not taking his, you know, end of season, you know, quote unquote time off, but there is that point in the season where maybe he's just not feeling it. And then he just says, hey, you know what, dude, I'm taking some time off the bike. I want to, you know, reset, and I'll come back to it.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter actually when you take it. It just as long as you do listen to yourself, like when you need it. But like my example, for example, last year when with COVID, I went back to Belgium in middle of this summer, end of summer, and I was frustrated. I couldn't get any racing in, even if I killed people, basically because there was no start places, and like the local riders had the first call. So I came back. I was quarantined. I couldn't avoid it, even if I have the paperwork to avoid it. They didn't let me slide. I had to go through quarantine like everyone else. And here was my nail in the coffin. I kept training through it, and then I did a full Zwift season. Then by December, January, and actually in December, I was hitting my best ever like numbers on a trainer inside. Plus, top like add in that also we had a severely strict lockdown. I couldn't leave my local area. in my local area. You saw the pictures I shared. Like I'm between two mountain ranges, and it was last winter was cold, windy, snowy. I couldn't. It the few times I tried riding outside, it was -5 the whole day. So no go, just Zwift. And then January came around. I was fried mentally and physically. And then that kept going into 2021 once like I basically came back to my disordered eating for a period because I was trying to be super light for the Zwift Premier Division. And that backfired also. And then the glimpse of racing came around and I just nailed myself like 20-hour weeks. And you and me also had a call back then. It's like I think you had a look at my profile on WKO.
Yep.
So I just like nailed myself like into the ground. It was if I that's like the time where a coach comes in handy just to like pull you back. I was self-coached for the majority of this season, and yeah, it didn't end well. Like I came racing and I was like fried to the bone.
And you know what, dude, on that point, I get a lot of, we do the PFAs, the free power file analysis for everyone, which are great. And I think this isn't everyone. I think some people are really good at self-coaching. I know I'm not. I don't do it myself because the same thing happens to me, man. I think this happens. I'm saying overall, the pattern I get from people who do this is they're doing too much, and like they're adding interval days or they're adding a couple hours when they shouldn't be, or riding on their off day because they're not sure if they should. It's good to have someone else's voice telling you it's okay to take time off, or you don't need this, or let's tweak this, let's dial it back. It's okay.
So, I mean, so following two examples that I was meaning to share, two of my athletes. One is a female, she's a bit older, in her 40s, with a family and kids and a full-time job. And the other one is my age, but he just had a newly born recently. So the first one, I'm going to label the female as a rider A, the male is rider B. So the rider A, she came to me last year, and she was also drilled to the ground. I mean, I had her do a blood test just like to see what's happening with her, and I had to make her take 14 days off, like 2 weeks, because it was that bad. It was that bad that like she needed rest. Slowly came back into it, and voila, power went up and up and up, and we just kept pushing into new grounds. Like we had setbacks. She had like a few hiccups here and there, but it was just like she needed rest. I mean, just like, again, this is my bug with Zwift. She also used Zwift as a coping mechanism, because like when she was stressed, she would just like go on Zwift, race once, twice, maybe even 3 times in a day, but that's too much. I mean, and like if you do this on back-to-back days, you don't recover from it.
No.
And the second one is also the same, was a similar case. He took a break, then we started working, and we got him like at a really like high level of fitness, really capable of riding racing on the Zwift Pro level. And then just like life hit. I mean, that's okay. Just like I had to remind him, look, it's fine. Come on, like it's gonna be okay. But he had a bit of a hiccup that he didn't tell me. So he had this important race, and he restricted his calories heavily just to be light, because before those big Zwift races, you have to weigh in. And I actually sat on Discord. Discord is the same app as we use, and I was basically, let's call it, in the team car de-essing him. And he just pulled the plug like 20 minutes in. I was like, what's wrong? Like, what's wrong? And then it's like the next day he calls me and he tells me like, oh, why did you do this? Like, I mean, restricted his calories severely, didn't even refuel afterwards. He said he was so dizzy, like, and he even did a 4 or 5 hour drive after that. Well, it was insane. Then like we got it back together. He had like a few setbacks in between just because life, newly born, and etc. And then last Sunday, this was the most beautiful text I received. So he's based in the States, like it's a time difference between us. I get up in the morning, I check my phone, And it was like, dude, I just had the best race of my life. I opened Training Peaks all-time records, like through all parameters,
That's
like through
awesome,
all,
man.
yeah. I mean, it's just like, I just had to get him to be like, support him and just tell him, you have to eat, like, doesn't matter how light you are. But then again, like when that also goes back to nutrition. Weight loss is a side effect of a good training program, let's call it nutrition program, and low stress. If you're stressed and if you're obsessing over things, you're not going to lose weight. You're going to gain it because your hormones will be out of whack.
100%, dude.
So I mean, it's just like weight loss will never happen. Will never happen once you're stressed and just obsessing over things.
I want to. This brought up a good point, dude. I did that Alexi interview last week. Now he made a mention of Riley Amos. He was at I can't think of what race it was. Oh god, it's like a big mountain bike race. I don't know why I can't think of the name of it, but he said that Riley was off the front, and I didn't know what was going on. We talked about it, but I looked it up afterwards, and Riley's this young, like 19-year-old, like amazing mountain bike phenom, right? And he went off the front for, I don't know, an hour, 90 minutes or something. And I think for the entire day, he had 2 gels for the entire amount. This is like whatever. I think it was like a 3-hour race, or I could be wrong. I think it was something like that. And I looked it up afterwards. He ended up, he found Riley was off the front. He found himself on the trail riding backwards. He was all confused because he saw the other guys coming at him and he was like, I don't know what's going on. So he ended up like turning around. I think he sat down for a little while. He ended up getting third on the day. He was like in such a dark spot, but he had to sit at the finish line and he just couldn't even stand up. He was so dizzy. Like he was just like, didn't know where he was. And he was just like, and you can read the Instagram post. And it was just like, oh my God, such a dark day, but he just didn't, fuel and hydrate properly. And like, that's, dude, it can like really mess you up,
I
and
mean,
he would
this
have had to
happened
win.
this happened to me this year on a training ride. So I made a bet with Fraser, and I'm gonna tell the story to the full extent. So I made a bet with him that he won't finish in the top 5 of a certain race. He was going really well, and then he made it onto the podium. So the bet was I had to do between 230 and 250 Ks. So I did this loop once before. It's around 240 Ks, but I chose the worst day to do it. I was already on the verge of being fried. It was a public holiday here. It was stupidly hot, and I had to ride for a good 60 Ks with no water, no food. So I managed to find, I was already like 120 K in. I found like, so just to put it in context, I had to ride to like through a valley, and it was so hot in the valley. There was like, my head was like melting. I was dizzy the whole time. So I got to this gas station. I emptied like 2 liter bottles, Coke, 2 packs of Haribo, and I bought like, I don't know how many Snickers. The only good thing was I had like a 30-minute climb, and it took me up and almost to 15, no, not 1500, almost to 1,000 meters. So it was a bit cooler there. But I had to descend on the other side towards Italy, and then it was like an oven there. I had to ride home. So from that point to the next climb, there was about 60K. And there was like another category 2 climb. I basically parked it on the top of the category 2 climb, and I burst into tears, and I'm not lying. I was so close to calling home to someone, please take me up, but then I managed to I stopped again like at a gas station, just like refueled, got some fuel in, and just like came home, had a shower, crashed into bed, and woke up 10 hours later.
Dude, this is actually a good topic, man. We should do on one of the bike radio calls about when the experiences that you've had of making that call. Because I've made that call before, but I'm like, I'm not going to make it home, and I've called my wife, and I'm always like, oh man, I'm really setting myself up here. But sometimes if you find yourself in that deep of a hole, dude, like you gotta, like, it's what's best for you.
I mean, I never made a call because of that. I made a call like last week when my crank fell off the bike, so I had to call it and nearly killed myself on a descent. But I made also a call, like a stupid call in Belgium once. So I was warned to not go out because it was crazy windy and stormy. So I had to take the train from Kortrijk to another town, and had to call my house mom to come to pick me up because it was so windy, so stormy, like I couldn't ride. I made calls like that, but never because I couldn't get home.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, it's just like you just need to sometimes, like you said, more less is more, and you're not gonna like get it wrong if you just pull the plug, like reset, like rest, refuel, and you're not gonna even go wrong with consuming more fuel than you need to.
for sure.
So I mean,
Early and often, man. That's what I always say. Just
yeah,
start eating.
but I mean, especially like our bodies are weird in a way, but they also adapt quickly. So this is also like with calorie counting. You cannot really predict how many calories you need or how many grams of something you need. Let's say I used to count when I used to eat like 1600, 1500, 1600 a day. That was not enough because I was training 4 hours a day. So yeah, I mean, you really can't predict. Like, so Gemma, she basically gave me an example of a rider who increased his calories. He's a professional cyclist, from about 2000 to he now eats between 3, I think she said 6 or 7 per day. He got leaner, lighter, and faster by eating more.
But I'm sure it's also in the context of eating the right calories too, you know?
Yeah, I mean, of course, if
Yeah,
you
for
junk food,
sure, for sure.
if you junk food, like, I mean, it's just like, no, I have to eat healthy. I mean, yeah,
Oh
but
man.
I mean, just like it's a tricky topic, and like, I mean, I'm pretty sure you also been in this boat, like yourself. It's just uh, like I said, like the first thing you think about when things go wrong is like, I have to cut weight to like, it will help me be stronger, faster, improve my performance, but it doesn't work. I mean, it's weight loss should always be a side effect of training. And I started working with an athlete a few weeks ago, or maybe a month ago. And I just told them weight loss will come as a side effect. You have to fuel for the work required. And even like majority of people now are doing indoor training. Indoor training, you actually need to consume more than you think, because like muscle contractions don't stop on a trainer because you're constantly pedaling.
Exactly, dude. And it's the same thing on that same point, riding outside in the cooler weather. I get so many
Oh yeah,
comments
yeah.
where, I didn't even go through one bottle, but it was cold outside, so it wasn't that bad. And I'm like, no, man, you got to hydrate. It doesn't, you're sweating just as much, even if you don't feel it. You don't feel like you're working that hard. You are. You need to even hydrate even more in the colder weather because you don't feel it. People struggle with that. But I wanted to say, dude, on my own journey, I try to eat as healthy as I can. And don't get me wrong, I love eating pizza. I love all this, but I have my wife, she's like, we're not eating healthy all the time, So that's why I have that 80-20 there. And we'll get takeout, like once a week. And it's fine. It's finding that balance. That's what I found that works for me. It's yeah.
Yeah, you need balance like with everything in life, especially with nutrition. I mean, balance is key. I mean, also Josh like told me I had some questions lined up with him, because I also, in terms of nutrition, I started a bit too hard this winter, and he just like said to me, balance, mate, balance. It'll be all okay. Like, I mean, you're training, you're full time, you're just riding your bike just every day, day in, day out. You need the energy for it. But also, just like, you need to also protect your body, especially in the winter. Like, if you underconsume, getting sick is so easy. That's like, I mean, I also live in a colder climate. I mean, maybe this winter I'll be lucky so that I can spend a few weeks in Spain, but that's an exception because I'm privileged enough to be in this position. But most people don't have that privilege, So if you ride outside in a colder climate, you need to drink, you need to eat, you need to figure out how to get those calories in. I mean, it could be through liquids, it could be through solid food, or a mix of both, but you just have to get them in.
For sure.
And then,
On that same point of getting sick, man, I'll tell you something that's worked for me. And I'm not saying this is going to work for everyone, but I quit drinking alcohol like 4 years ago. And dude, my sickness has come I barely get sick anymore. I think that with the combination then of drinking and, I was working so hard to get my cat one then. that I was training, a lot. And I think that was just digging myself a hole. And then I'd come home and have a couple beers or go out with my friends and stuff. And I'm not saying you can't do those things, but I'm just saying that really helped me. And I feel like I recover so much better now from, not having that in my system.
I mean,
Um,
alcohol gives you like information, but also, so I don't know if I should be saying this, like, but me and Fraser actually had some of my best performances after a night out in a few years. Yeah,
oh man.
but it goes like with this. You're relaxed after it. So if you're always tense, you just relaxed after it. And for me, is I still have like a few beers now and then, and it's not like always because I'm just not used to it. I mean, maybe I have beer here and there, but it's just more of a social thing. Just like I can relax, I can have my beer, I can have my pizza, or if I stop in a cafe, I can have my slice of cake, I can just have whatever I want. But just like how this weight loss and etc. Shaped me, a lot of things that I used to crave, I don't crave anymore. So let's say my biggest craving recently is basically banana pancakes in the morning with blueberries and maple syrup. That's my biggest craving recently. But yeah, a beer once in a while won't do any harm. But it's
Oh
just
no, for
like,
sure, man. That's not what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I'm not making this general statement that, if you're gonna get sick if you drink. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, but see what works for you. I found that really works for me. It's been a good system.
yeah, I mean, just like surprised, like how me and him both like our best performances when we both had a few beers down the system, and it was like the first relapse, I felt horrible. I wanted to throw up in my mouth, and then I was flying.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but like when you're unhappy, you do things. I mean, just like it's not like advisable, but just like it just again, happy head, happy legs. People don't have to walk the same path as I did, so hopefully they pick up a few good things through this. But also, I'm going to highlight here Alexi again. So when I met Alexi was at a race in Austria, and what surprised me how he took time for his kindness to riders and just like giving me tips. And he just like said, you always need to be happy and you need to enjoy it. Like he said that when he firstly met Van Avermaet, he basically said the same things to him.
That's awesome,
So
man. I think that goes
yeah.
a long way. I think we talked on the bike radio about this a little bit. I was talking to Brendan and Patrick and about like getting psyched up for a race and whether it's like maybe some people go to war or maybe some people like, are calm and collected, and it's finding what works for you. But I generally do think that being a calm and nice person at a race is always going to be better. He's always, I'm saying not always going to be better, but it's always going to be a win. Go in, say hello, meet some people, and then maybe you need to go back to your car and get on your trainer and put your war paint on or whatever you got to do. But
I
yeah, I
mean,
think
when it comes to racing, you can't like I never approach it like that. And even the biggest riders I met, okay, yeah, they have the serious face on, but like they're still at the end of the day, they're still like normal humans. They're just blokes like you and me, or like females. Um, and yeah, when it's time to fight, they'll fight. They won't know, like they won't like care if he's my friend or not. But when I just can't stand when I see athletes take it to the extreme and take it outside of the race, but also that it gets too sketchy in a sense that people can get hurt. So I found myself a few times in a situation when like the rider next to me said, "Hey, chill out. Like we all have families at home. We don't want to die." So I mean, in that regards, like yeah, you can take it as you're going in a war, but you don't know like what's the next person, like what he has at home or like what he has waiting for afterwards. I mean, I give you an example. This year I was in a race with my mate Arnaud, and he was in the winning breakaway. I was still at the bunch, and I got dropped later on the climb. But a guy was taking huge risks, and he smacked into a pole. But a pole was like yay high, like metal pole, and he just like went straight forward, head first into a pole. And is it really worth it in a kermesse race or like just in your normal race? Is that really worth it? Taking a risk to move up to any positions that you end up smacking yourself in a pole, end up unconscious in a hospital? In my opinion, no.
no, dude, definitely not. Dude, this reminds me of when I did a lot of races in Brooklyn and Prospect Park, the series, the promoter he would get on the megaphone before the races and he would do this little rap about how this is not the Tour de France. If you're whether you're sprinting for 4th place or for 28th place, it doesn't matter. You're not on the podium. Everybody has to go to work on Monday, so please just be careful out there. And it was great, man. I think it really was like a reminder of like, okay, guys, like this is supposed to be fun. It's 5 a.m. on a Sunday morning. Like, let's go about our days afterwards.
So a friend of mine, Russell Crowder, Ginger Citizen, if you saw on Discord,
Okay, yeah.
he is a Zwift legend. Actually, he has this saying: "Have fun, but don't be a twat." So yeah, I mean, just like you just need to like protect yourself, but also think about people around you. I mean, bikes can be sketchy the best of times, especially but also for you guys in the US, you race in half open traffic.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's just like
I think that's part of the reason why gravel is so big, man. No cars.
actually never did a gravel race. I rode a gravel bike once when I broke my bike again in Belgium. I nicked it from my mate Simon. Like he wanted to kill me afterwards because like I dismantled his whole setup. But yeah, it was an interesting experience. I just didn't like that white handlebars, and I also nearly killed myself because I figured like a gravel bike is kind of like a mountain bike, but it turns out it isn't. So I just like went down this gnarly single trail up over roots, and just like I almost ended up flying in a tree.
So if those are wide handlebars, what do you use on your road bike? What's the width?
38.
38. Okay. Is that the
Yeah,
same?
30.
Is that the same on the hoods as in the drops? 38 the whole way?
No, I put my hood inside because like
Uh,
I have my hands like this,
gotcha.
so it's just more comfortable for me. If I could, I would go even narrower. So this is like the trouble I'm having now because like we're using integrated components on our new team bike. So can I please get a 38? No, you can only have a 40. So yeah, I mean, just like I guess that's a Euro thing. Like it's tilted inside, narrow as possible.
I see a lot of people with that in the US though. I see like you see like Remco and you see other guys do it. They all have the hoods tilted in. I've never tried the hood tilted in, but I ride a 38 as well, but mine flare out. So I have a 40 in the drops.
I mean, I saw a more extreme position from a mate of mine, Dan Begum, who also went for the track record. And I think he has a 30. I'm sorry if I got this wrong, but I think he has a 34 or even narrower. It's basically a track bar, and the hoods are so narrow, like his elbows go like this out. And it's a really extreme position, but he gets so aero. I remember he actually had a fight at Tour of Slovenia with a guy from an Italian team because he had the radio in the front, not in the back, to like save aerodynamic drags, and he was like taking the piss out of Dan. Basically, Dan, he responded that, yeah, you're the idiot here. You're running tubs, you're running this, it makes you automatically slower in the radio in the back. Like I'm gaining watts, and he actually proved it with the track record. I mean, so the text me and him had, he basically did 370 watts or even less for the track record. So that just proves like how aerodynamics affect you.
For sure, dude. For sure. That reminds me of, I
So,
can't think what the guy's name was, but it was all over. I don't know what race it was, but I think it was maybe one of the classics where the guy.
you mean with those extensions?
Well, yeah. So it was like no stem. It was like whatever, a 20
I know
millimeter
the guy.
stem.
I know the
Yeah.
guy, Jan van Skip. I think it's
Okay.
Jan is. I don't know how to pronounce his last name correctly. He is actually a trackie, and I think he became world champion a few days ago on the track in Roubaix.
Oh wow, good for him, man. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, no, he's a trackie, and he races for a Conti team in Holland. He always had like in those extreme positions, like really tilted, and he has like such an extreme reach, just like
Oh
negative
yeah.
stem.
Yep.
Negative
Yep.
stem is just like you always when you watch those end of classics, end of season races, those classics, you always see him in a breakaway. If you see a beat cycling jersey, that's him.
Oh man. Crazy
No.
stuff, dude. It's crazy stuff.
I mean, I still believe in aerodynamics, but just like also, uh, you have to also find again a fine balance between what's enough, what's too much. Like those handlebars, in my opinion, are a bit too much, especially on our European roads where they're really narrow and twisty corners, especially Holland or Belgium. If you've never been there, you cannot imagine how that looks.
For sure. No, dude, it is just what
But
you said, finding balance. I think overall, everything here in this conversation is finding, it's like talking to Alexi, finding a balance, finding what works for you, a balance in everything, in your diet, in your riding, taking days
yeah,
off, overall moderation, find a balance, see what works for you. This should be fun. What was the mantra that you were saying? It was, what was it? Happy head, happy legs.
happy head, happy legs. So that's what Fraser
Exactly.
says. That's what
Exactly.
Fraser says every time. And
Yeah.
just like every time when I annoy him, like when I'm going by, just like happy head, happy legs, and he would just like send text, like copy paste them, and I basically received a line of text like yeah begging him on WhatsApp with him.
Nice.
No, I mean just like you have to enjoy it, and if you enjoy it, you're gonna reap more from it than if you just force purely because you're trying to, how can I put this into words, if you enjoy it, you're gonna get more out of it than if you just like chase performance. And
For
because
sure.
at the end of the day, performance always won't be there, and it shouldn't be the primary factor. You have to do it for yourself and for fun.
Awesome, dude. So much good stuff. We're gonna have to do another call because I want to talk about Zwift racing. We didn't even get to it today. I want to do a whole call on Zwift racing. Maybe we'll get Patrick involved a little bit too.
Yeah, maybe we can do something. Always excited. Like, I mean, first time I was scared, like when I joined you on a call, but like now it's a bit more comfortable. So
Well, dude, I appreciate it, man. I think dude, there's so much good information here. I appreciate you being, open and expressing, what you've
no
been
problem.
through. I think this is great. People can draw from this, and people can reach out and talk to you if they have any other, questions or anything.
Yeah, just please don't put me on spam mail anymore, because of after our last podcast, I'm receiving spam mail every day. So
Oh,
please don't
really?
put me. Yeah,
Okay. That's not me. I don't know what's happening.
I know, it's just as a joke. Like
Yeah.
whoever did this, thank you.
All right, man.
uh,
Well, dude, thank you for chatting and enjoy your rest day. I'm about,
yeah.
it's 10:30 a.m. here. I'm gonna go for my ride soon.
Okay.
All right.
So yeah.
See you, man.